How's it going, folks? So, recently, Jinks put out a video in regards to Vaush, and I wanted to chime in my 2 cents on this. So, the first thing I wanted to say is that people like Vaush, and indeed people like Mr. Medicare, Jinks also had mentioned in the video, both of those individuals are probably not the individuals you want to look to if you're trying to get people who are both right leaning and left leaning to kind of put their differences aside, sit down and have good faith discussions, and find some common ground. I think both of those channels, they've established their viewership, and they're beholden to their viewership in that regards. Their viewership watches them for entertainment, kind of like, well, as you put it, WWE style SmackDown, or maybe as some other people, such as myself, would put it, internet Bloodsports, or maybe, kind of a version of a version of the Coliseum. They watch people like Vaush and Mr. Medicare because they want to see their gladiators go out and do battle with their political opposition. Not the type of people who are going to actually go out and have a good faith discussion with members on the opposition to try to convince them. And I'm very well aware of the case of Hunter Avalon. However, with Hunter Avalon, even before he had supposedly made that swap, for many of us on the right, we could kind of tell that Hunter did not really know what he was talking about when he was putting out those videos. And I think a lot of people who watched Hunter Avalon before he made that swap watched him solely, for entertainment value as well. These people weren't looking to be informed, and in fact, the videos I'd seen of Hunter Avalon before he made that swap just went to show he didn't know what he was talking about. And it's like, okay, I understand the kid was young when he started, so obviously you're going to get that immaturity that comes with it. However, again, this goes to show that just because you get viewership does not necessarily mean you fully understand or know what you're talking about. And as in the case with Jim, aka Internet Aristocrat, I do agree that, yes, he takes some of the most extreme examples and puts them out there to show his viewership. His viewership are into seeing this sort of stuff. I mean, it's, again, entertainment. Now, one of the things that you pointed out, which I've pointed out for a while on different topics, is the statistical tricks that people will play when discussing any of the basic issues. I believe you had mentioned that a lot of these people who were anti-homosexuals sit there and say 61% of people who are HIV positive are homosexual males, and then you point out and say, well, yes, but there's only a small percentage of people in the U.S. with HIV, which is something that needs to be said in conjunction with that 61% to counter this false impression that people who would use that point out. So, with that being said, I think that there actually needs to be more of that. And of course, this trick gets played quite a bit on several different topics when people have an agenda to push, or they're just out there to, quote, pwn their ideological opponent. Now, but to go into this further, yes, intellectual dishonesty is something that's going to kill any attempts for people who are ideologically disagreeing with each other to actually try to find common ground. You pointed out that Jim has done this. I've seen Vaush do this. Actually, I took some time to watch one of Vaush's videos. I believe it's why I'm pro gun and how am I pro gun or something of that nature. In this video, Vaush says certain things that are correct, but he also says certain things that are incorrect, which leads me to believe that either A, he didn't really look into this as much as he should have before putting this information out, or B, he's being intellectually dishonest. And somebody who does know more on the topic comes along and tries to have a discussion with him, it's probably not going to go so well. Partly because I don't think Vaush is going to be willing to admit he's wrong. Vaush doesn't seem to think that way. Vaush seems to think any admission that you're wrong is a sign of weakness, at least from what I've observed of him. Now, I could be mistaken on this. There could be other videos where he does come out and say, you know what, you're absolutely right. However, my suspicion is that he takes that as a sign of weakness or blood in the water. So, and unfortunately, many of the people who follow Vaush and who will invariably be in that chat are going to be encouraging the internet blood sport type of mentality. So this is really with somebody like Vaush or Mr. Medic or somebody like that, you're really going to have a hard time getting people who are ideologically opposed to one another to actually have a conversation. Now, on the flip side of this, when people like you and I talk about things, or we try to have a good faith discussion, to a lot of people who are attracted to this sort of thing, that's boring to them. It involves thinking. It involves questioning what you believe, or maybe questioning some information you had that might not have been so good beforehand. That takes work. That also takes humility, which there seem to be a number of people who don't seem to possess that trait, or at least not very well versed in exercising that trait. So you're going to have a hard time with that. What also needs to be discussed when dealing with people like Vaush is the pack mentality, the mob mentality, the herd mentality, tribalism, or whatever you want to call it. It's going to be there. It's intrinsic to these followings. The fact of the matter is that I stand by the statement I made when I referred to Vaush's followers as a pack of hyenas. I also said ditto for Jim's following. The fact of the matter is that there's a lot of tribalism that goes on with that. Go ahead and stray from the pack, and you're considered a traitor, a coward, weak, something of that nature, and the pack will devour you too. This trait, is common among pack animals. Humans are no different, and it was a necessary trait in our earlier years, our hunter-gatherer societies, and even as we advanced a little bit more, I mean, when you had to go to war, you had to go to war, and there wasn't any time to question it. Now, with that being said, this hinders any rational discussion. It hinders any intellectual discussion. it hinders people from seeing nuance in a situation. The larger the mob is, the more simple their thoughts have to be. And this is because you're not dealing with just one person, you're dealing with many people. Furthermore, if you've ever had any training on dealing with riots, or you've seen the police react to riots, they take this stuff very seriously, because one shouting person in that mob can take that, and that group of people can turn that group of people uh, into something that's a lot more dangerous. The fact of the matter is that anybody who knows anything about those situations know, if you see a mob forming up and you don't have a dire reason to stay in that area, it's probably a good idea to get out of that area, because you don't know if you're going to be their target or not. And these mobs don't act rationally. So, with this being said, this does hinder rational discussion. And furthermore, to add on to that, the pack mentality is pretty much pro censorship. And as Jinks pointed out, yes, censorship does not make the bad idea go away. Censorship is anti-free speech. It's anti-rational. And the fact of the matter is, you censor somebody, they don't just stop having those beliefs. In fact, usually when you do that, you vindicated them. Furthermore, while them and their following have been censored, and your following hasn't, they still get to hear what you say, and they get to come up with the counter arguments. Meanwhile, you censored them and you're not, looking to hear them anymore. Well, they form up more advanced arguments to counter your arguments. And then you've got nothing when one of them does break your echo chamber. And usually that person exposes your following and you for an absolute fool. And I've seen this happen. I've seen one video where a white nationalist was absolutely making fools of Trump supporters with things that they didn't know, with arguments they didn't hear. I mean, now granted, had they heard those arguments before and actually looked into them beforehand, they might have had a chance to formulate a counter argument to that white nationalist. But since that white nationalist had been censored on several places, they didn't even get to hear what he said, so they couldn't even formulate a counter argument to it. So you guys want the white nationalists to say, prime example, to make fools out of you, keep censoring them. They will find their own spots to come together and formulate their own arguments, and then turn around, and once one of them does break your echo chamber, they're going to expose you guys for complete ignoramuses, so to speak. Well, so this is, again, where the mob mentality leads to censorship, and where censorship leads to people not thinking, not being able to form an argument against whatever bad idea that's been censored. And there you have it. One of the things that contributes to mob mentality is the fact that there are a number of people that will form an opinion on an issue before having complete information. They will be setting that opinion, and they'll preach this opinion to other people as if it were fact. And there are a lot of other people that are even less diligent in doing the research and will take that opinion on as well. And I do believe Vaush is guilty of some of this as well. And I'm going to give an example brought up in the comment section is Ukraine. Now, a lot of people are upset about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and I understand that. And to answer the person's question in the comment section, Yes, I very well was aware of that. In fact, even before the invasion, I was aware of the buildup. Plenty of people were asking me about that and what I thought of that. And at the time, prior to the invasion, I thought it was just going to be a show of force. I didn't think Putin was that ready for war that he would actually invade Ukraine. Well, I was mistaken on that one. At least I can admit where I'm wrong. To the person that made the comment, can you say the same? Can you say that, you're willing to admit where you're wrong? However, a lot of the people who take the opinion that this invasion was completely evil and that we need to step in and crush Russia for this and stuff like that, have you really thought about the situation yourself? The situation didn't start with the invasion of Russia. It didn't start with the buildup at the border. There are a lot of factors to take into account with this. And I'm not saying Putin was right to invade, and I'm not saying Putin's a good guy. However, I think a lot of people have just jumped onto this bandwagon of, well, Russia invaded Ukraine, Russia bad. A lot of people haven't stopped to consider things like, does anybody know why NATO was formed? It was formed to go to war with what is now Russia. Take that fact into consideration. Take into consideration there was discussion of countries like Ukraine joining NATO. And if you look at the proximity of Ukraine to Moscow, it's very easy to see why Putin might not like that idea of Ukraine joining NATO. That is one thing that needs to be taken into consideration. Put yourself in his shoes for a second. Say Florida broke away from the U.S., and now the Warsaw Pact didn't break up. It was still in existence, and now they were getting really friendly with Florida, talking about Florida wanting to join the Warsaw Pact. Well, we wouldn't be too happy about that ourselves, would we? And yes, we have interfered in Ukrainian politics as well. So let's not pretend that we are entirely innocent in this situation either. So, yeah, these are things that should be considered. With that being said, I'm going to leave this at this because this should be food for thought. Any rational person should be able to sit there and take that bit of information, and even, they still believe that Russia evil, Russia committed an atrocity by invading Ukraine, they can at least take that part of the situation into account and say, maybe the situation is not quite so black and white as we originally thought. The other big concern is let's say Putin is 100% evil, that Putin just wants to take Ukraine for himself and rebuild Russia to its pre-1914 borders. Okay, is that really worth World War III over? Stopping him from doing that? Is it really worth getting nuked over? Just keep Putin back in the current borders that he has now, or to push Putin completely out of Ukraine? Well, I don't think it is. I don't think bringing life as we know it to a screeching halt is the best outcome. So make of that what you will. I'm not going to go into any more depth on this on the internet, and I have my reasons for doing this. But y'all take it easy out there and have a great day.